All right, so welcome to the next episode of the Unbiased Truth podcast, Because Real Estate. And today we're joined with Ricky, just like last time, and Kristin, just like last time. And Kristin can't join us today because she had better things to do with her time this afternoon. But she said she'll be here next time. Appreciate you guys joining us once again.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Today, as with these podcasts, we want to talk about singular issues that are affecting the real estate industry, and due to recent events, I think that today we will talk about ethics. Even though ethics is a requirement for your guys' CE training and all that stuff every couple of years to renew your license. But my opinion is, and this isn't just real estate agents, this is home inspectors and across the board, the industry as a whole, I think ethical issues are probably the number one threat facing the industry. There's a lot of chat about, the Zillows of the world and the iBuyer companies and, all that stuff. But I really think if it wasn't for the ethical issues, you wouldn't have to worry about, Zillow coming in and taking all the clients. So to the point where there's been research done and surveys taken, and 67.5% of people surveyed do not trust real estate professionals. Considering that people are, spending $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, that's a big number not to trust somebody with that kind of money. There's no real studies for home inspectors, but we could probably assume that that's probably about the same. Yeah. So let's talk about some factors on why people just out the gate don't trust agents. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that is a lot to unpack, Sidney. So first thoughts from me is, we get a lot of clients that come that have had bad experiences with previous agents. So of course, anytime you have a bad experience, it puts a bad taste in your mouth moving forward, and you're going to judge everything based on that. And so, unfortunately, there are some people in our industry that have not had to be that ethical to do the bare minimum in business that they're okay with. Yeah. And so there are those of us that have to work a lot harder to make up for the reputation that we've gotten from those bad experiences.
Yeah.
Well, no, I totally get what you're saying, and it brings to mind one specific very dear friend of mine who I knew before I was in real estate, and I still know. We're very close, and he still thinks that the realtors are not really very necessary. And he also thinks that realtors and home inspectors and whoever else would be involved in the transaction, probably not so much lenders, but certainly home inspectors, that we have partnerships with our preferred home inspectors who we will bring in, and they will gloss over all of the issues in the home to just make the deal go through. I think that is something that many people have, just based on one of my friends thinking that, you know what I mean? And it's like, I try to tell him that is absolutely not what is going on here.
Yeah, and that's a fair assessment, because those rumors get started for a reason.
Absolutely.
As I tell people when I get brought in to do like buyer seminars, I said, me and, put whatever agent I'm with, we may be chucks and we may be having a good time up here, but I can promise you they're not worth my license for this one $400 deal that I'm doing, or whatever the cost of that inspection is, because I lose my license, that one $400 inspection is not going to go very far as far as covering my bills. But unfortunately, there's quite a few inspectors. I say quite a few. I mean, I'm hoping it's the minority of it. And I think hopefully that's what we're talking about today, is the minority of agents. But when it's amplified, it's kind of seems like it may not be. But you do see some that write soft reports. you know, because they value that relationship with the agent, because that's what the agent wants. You know, I've had an agent recently, they use me because I've never once asked them, what do you want me to do with this information?
Right.
And I said, well, I didn't think it was any of your concern.
Right.
I mean,
right.
But they legit had a home inspector, when they found certain things, would say, hey, do you want me to put this in the report? And she was like, of course I want you to put that in the report. Like, you found it, it goes in the report. You know, why are you asking me that? And that's a shame, you know, because it really, when you go on these, whether it's Facebook, whether it's articles, whether it's whatever, and people start ripping, you know, my case, home inspectors, can't really defend it, you know, because I've seen it all. You know, I've seen all the things that they're talking about. You know, I can say that we don't do that.
Right.
You know, the more known inspectors typically don't do that, but I still can't just defend it, you know, in a way that you know, people's going to believe me, because
it's hard to say that it's not going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because certainly somewhere it probably is occurring exactly as such, you know. But the thing to me on that is kind of like, it's not worth you risking your license. It's repeat business and referral business from clients that you've done a really good job for. If I sold somebody the wrong house, you know, and they feel like I didn't do a good job helping them purchase their home, that all of these faults or defects in the home were discovered after closing that didn't show up in the report, things like that, I think that is often what kind of perpetuates that idea. And so I want to make sure that they know every possible thing that's like could be considered wrong with the house, and then we can hash out, is that something that is too wrong for you to purchase this house, you know, or there's too many defects and what have you, because even new construction, I mean, every home is going to have problems. If ever I hired a home inspector and the report came up 100% clean, I would be worried. I would be worried. Yeah.
So, well, I've had agents, you know, Cindy was one of them, you know, my wife. She asked me one time, she says, have you ever had a home inspection where you didn't find anything? I said, no.
Right.
No, never. I mean, sure, you know, less than 5, sure. You know, there's been some really clean houses, but never 0. And she says, yeah, I didn't think so. Last time I'm using that guy. Because it becomes uncomfortable, you know, especially if it's not a brand new house, because the ones that are less than, you know, 3, 4, 5 things are typically brand new houses. You know, it's not a 4-year-old house that's that clean, you know. And I think a lot of it is also just nobody knows, right? Nobody knows what we do. Nobody knows what you guys do.
There's a lot of misinformation out
so
there.
going back to after closing and finding issues, and I had this conversation a couple days ago with a client, and this helped me get to this topic, because I did the re-inspection. I did not do the first inspection. Someone else did, not from us, but just someone else in general. And it was a, you know, older house, 50s, and they did not go in the crawl space. They say they couldn't fit. Cool, it happens. You know, I mean, not everybody, you know, is the size of Kristin and can fit in every crawl space. And not every crawl space is meant to be crawled. But they also said that, you know, some of the floor issues are just settlement, even though they never went to the crawl space. And, you know, and there's some other issues where that happened that the client just wasn't impressed with. So I get called out to do this re-inspection. They're supposed to close that day. I go in the crawl space and I find, because I'm checking for leaks that someone else had found, and I find some pretty significant issues, you know. So before I even get to that point, I'm less than 5 minutes inside the house, less than 5 minutes, and we've already found a leak in the roof, or I think through the windows, because it's first floor ceiling at the wall, and there's a couple other issues that wasn't in the original report. That's just plain as day, you know, very, very open, didn't happen in between because it was installed that way. And the agent looked at the client and said, hey, what do you want to do? We haven't even been here 3 minutes, and we've already found, you know, a dozen things that you didn't even know about. And like I told her, I said, well, since the agent brought it up, you know, always keep in mind, and this is whether it was the original inspection, me doing this re-inspection, this house is 70 years old. I'm here for 2.5, 3 hours on a normal inspection, you know, on a house that's been vacant, from my understanding, for like a year to 2 years. Right. This is what I found so far. Imagine what you're going to find when you live here
after 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks, 2 months. You know, what else? You know, this is why we start telling, you know, reasonable expectations of what you're going to find when you move into the home, because we just can't find everything. Right. But people don't understand that. You know, so they close and they say, well, you know, we had all this stuff happen. You know, we don't ever intentionally overlook or miss anything. You know, and then are those occasions sometimes you just buy a lemon, you know, especially renovated houses.
Absolutely.
You know, sometimes
Flips.
you know, they did a really good job of painting it and making it look good and covering the stuff up that we can't see. They know we can't see, and it held together long enough to get you to move in, and it started popping.
Sure.
And sometimes you just bought a lemon, you know, and it didn't matter who inspected it. They just did a really good job. You can't see
behind the walls, right? Like, I mean.
So I think there's a lot of that goes on that people just don't understand, you know, what really happens throughout the deal to begin with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that comes into play when we go back to ethics. Is the agent and the inspector and everyone else that's in a transaction, is it a matter of being ethical or not, and just not discovering something or not having the knowledge or setting the correct expectations or the training? You know, I feel like a lot of agents and inspectors, it's just lack of training and knowledge to set those expectations with the client. They're not trying to or actively being unethical.
Sure.
They just don't know better.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that there's different scenarios that we've all been involved in where it could be either or. But the big thing is when someone's being unethical on purpose.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Which we do see a lot of. And then, unfortunately, for people that are good and solid in our industries, then, of course, we get the bad rap from those that are choosing to be unethical in various reasons.
Yeah, I know, and some of this is coming out of COVID. You know, new agents, and we can put new agents during COVID, even though it's been 2 years. You know, they may have been licensed 2.5, 3 years now, but COVID was a different animal. You know, there wasn't any negotiations and you know, stuff like that. So now in the last few months, where we're doing inspections that mean something, and repair addendums and negotiations, and now you got to find people that, you know, because if you're a brand new agent and you had nothing to do with the trades or construction, and now all of a sudden you got a week and a half to figure out how to fix all this stuff,
right?
You know, you don't know who to go to. So a lot of stuff, you know, some people are being taken advantage of, you know, and then some people just they've never been in those situations or these situations and whatnot. And then there's a lot of, you know, feast and famine in the industry to begin with. But you know, the example, and there's plenty of them, was offering a free radon test, a retest to a client because our radon tech knew that area has high radon. And the current test, or the first test, the weather factors wasn't comfortable with it. And it's new construction. And she called me and said, hey, what do you think I should do? You know, are you okay if I offer a free? I said, yeah, who's going to care if you give a free radon test?
Right.
Sure. Right.
And even if it's after closing, it's new construction. I've never had a builder say, no, we're not going to mitigate it. They've always installed it. Even if there's a little, in the beginning, they always like, all right, we'll go ahead and do it. Because there's probably just too much gray area in that liability, what they have to fix, you know, that they just don't want to worry about that. Yeah. Who would have ever thought that there would have been some ugly phone calls from the agent to the radon tech for offering a free service to make sure your client doesn't get lung cancer?
Well, and that's the thing. It's the right thing to do.
Right.
You know, we always talk about doing the right thing, whether it's the popular thing to do or not.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, your morals versus ethics.
And it's like, because she apologized to me. She's like, you know, if I cost you future business, I said, well, if that's what they're upset about, they're not going to work with us anyways. I mean, we'll get a couple inspections out of them. That's about it. Because they're not going to, you know, like how we do reports or what we find or whatever. And we don't ask for input from agents on how we do that. So So that's okay. But like I said, it just blew my mind. Like I said, how are they going to badmouth us at the end of the day? Because she was worried about that. I said, how are they actually going to badmouth us? Like, hey, don't call 360. They offered a free radon test, so my client doesn't get lung cancer because they were worried about them on a new construction where the builder would have fixed it. Don't call that company. You know, I mean, you can only twist that so many ways to make us look bad. But yeah, those are some of the things that we've been seeing. Like that re-inspection. Like I even told the agent when she got there, I said, look, I'm worried about what we'll find, because obviously re-inspections were only there to look at what was fixed, what was negotiated. I said, but I can't go into a crawl space in good conscience and just act like I didn't see this joist that's split almost in two, or that the main beam's like a bad day away from just dropping 2 inches. I mean, I can't ignore it. I understand there's contracts and stuff when you're in that doesn't affect me, and I know it's going to make your life harder.
You have to do what's right for you.
I can't just not see that.
Well, and unfortunately, like you mentioned earlier, during COVID, when the market was hot, and it was almost impossible to kill a deal because you weren't doing appraisals and inspections, and you didn't have to be a high-end negotiator, etc. It was basically, let's run a title search. As the buyer throws some extra $1,000 at the seller and move on, close, and then the buyer had to worry about everything after the fact when we're all removed from the situation at that point. And real estate gets the bad rap of, it's easy. And anyone can do it, and you can make a lot of money, which anyone can do it, and you can make a lot of money. But we always say, anyone can swing a hammer, but like, should you?
Sure.
And so now you're the agent and the home inspector. Deals can potentially fall apart from things. So, unfortunately, there are some driven by the greed and just the transactional aspect of it, unfortunately, versus the relational aspect. And so they don't want the deal, because right now we are working extra hard to get deals because the market slowed down for various reasons. Yeah. So I think it's unfortunately easier for some people to choose maybe the wrong path in an ethical dilemma, because now their livelihood is on the line.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of things are not spoken or misinterpreted, or so I feel like that's what we've been seeing recently more on our end. It's, discovering certain aspects about a house. I had one situation where originally, Sid, you did the inspection. Originally, the garage workshop and had a loft above it was not as is. It was not written into the contract, etc. So we inspected it. It was a mess, and we requested repairs. Rightly so. We were able to, and the seller came back and said, we're not doing repairs, and there were other things going on. But anyways, we terminated that deal because it was the best interest of the buyer. When they relisted it, then they put in the listing, the garage was sold as is, and with no known defects. And they had the home inspection report. Right. They had all the defects, and sellers don't have to disclose. But the agent, our license is on the line. We do have these ethical laws in place, and just the agent putting that into the report when in fact she was supposed to be reporting defects. It was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. And I'll also, just to clarify, like that agent for my reinspection, I mean, she told me find what you find. Like she didn't stop me. Sure. So that's just so everybody understands that part. But no, then do you think, that feast or famine thing where the market slowed down, and we've seen actually a couple of iterations of this even through, the peak of the market, because there was, so many buyers and so many buyers agents and not enough homes that there was a lot of buyers agents not getting money, right? Even though there's a lot of agents that did very well during the last couple of years, there still were a few that... It
was really competitive, so not everyone can be a winner.
So it's fascinating that we now slow down, and there's still... whether it's the same group or it's a different group, but are being affected in a different market. But I know this is probably a rhetorical question, but I'm do you think that the way agents are compensated leads to the ethical problems that some of them face?
I think sometimes, again, there's different people with different morals and views on ethics. But in real estate, the fee is negotiated with the seller, between the seller and the listing agent, of what that buyer broker is being paid. And that's set. So there has been discussions amongst the entire real estate industry, nationwide about, whether you see 2% commission for the buyer broker versus the 3%. And do people steer their clients away from the house that's only paying a 2% commission and steer them towards a house and a sale that is going to give them a full commission?
Right.
In my opinion, there are absolutely people who do that. Sure. Because they are driven by money and a transactional business.
And you see that in the these real estate groups when they start talking about some of the builders. This builder's only offering 1% or $1,000, and you'll see a whole list of agents we don't, you don't never get my business. So they just ignore them altogether.
No, that absolutely happens. To me, it's just basically what I want to do is just put my buyer in the absolute best house for them that they're going to be stoked with forever. Because if they're a first-time home buyer, they're probably going to be selling in 5 years, and I want them to come to me, and then, you know what I mean? So I want to do a really good job for them. I don't really care what the commission is. I mean, I do love big commissions.
Of course.
But little commissions are cool too, and what I really want to do is just the best job that I can for people. I do think that the structure, the way that real estate agents or realtors are paid, is commission only, right? Like I only get paid if a transaction closes. I think that does cause misrepresentation of condition of homes by listing agents, and probably by buyer's agents too, who are like, that's not that big a deal. Whatever. So because if you're at a job that if you're going to make the same money no matter the outcome, why would you lie about something? Right. So but if you're only going to get paid if it for one particular outcome, yes, I think that people are, quick to sometimes misrepresent things to make sure that they get the outcome they want.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, we actually did an ethical training for one of our real estate courses, and that was actually one of the ethical dilemmas that they talk about is misrepresentation of the data. And, do you tweak some numbers and make things look good and to get an outcome or a goal at the end of it? Or are you honest and potentially tank whatever that situation is? Or in our case, terminate a deal, et cetera. And so, that's a driving ethical dilemma. And the world is full of ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, and it's and when you start looking at the model, how it's set up for you guys to begin with. And of course, agents know this. People who aren't agents may not know this. You're looking at 6%, and they'll divide that up. The seller's agent divides that up, or however that works. Hopefully 3 and 3, or whatever. And people's like, oh, are you getting 6% on a $500,000 house?
Right.
Well, no, it's actually split. Oh, so you're still getting 3%. Well, no, because then that's split.
Right.
And then if you're on a team, it's split again. So out of that 3%, that you may be getting, you may only be getting, 10 to 20, 30% of that, depending on how your splits are and what your office is and what your caps are. And then, and the fascinating for me, and this is just how the industry is set up, is, you're all 1099 contract employees, but you're not.
Whether you're on a team or not.
I mean, I can be a 1099 contract employee, and I can go work for as many companies as I want to work for and do as many jobs, but you can't. You're with Keller Williams. You're with Keller Williams. 1099. That office, that broker, that's who you. But you're still your own individual person. It's not like you have to go in every day and punch a clock. And if you don't ever go to Keller Williams, the brick and mortar building, you don't have to, right?
Correct.
And that's just. It's really weird, especially when you look at all these IRS laws of what constitutes a 1099 and all that stuff. And I can't hire somebody as a 1099 employee because as soon as I give them my software and say you have to use my software IRS says they're not a 1099 employee anymore. They're a W-2 employee.
Interesting.
You know, they've really cracked down on that in the last couple of years.
Crazy.
The person I hired to be a 1099, I hire loosely, they pretty much have to have free reign to do their own thing when they want, their own tools. Anything I provide for them can be translated into them being a W-2 employee at that point. But real estate, it's just like, yeah, we make our own rules.
Yeah.
we do what we want.
Well, to some degree, for sure. But like to other degrees, man, there are a lot of rules to
Oh,
follow.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
crazy.
talking more about the employer-employee
Yes.
relationship.
Right.
Which is, for me, is just fascinating how that's set up.
I think another thing that makes people distrustful is I think people think that, I mean, they see that commissions tend to be large because home prices are large these days. And I think they think that realtors get all of that. I think that people largely have absolutely no idea how realtors are paid through a real estate transaction. I don't think that they realize that in most situations, the seller agrees to pay the listing agent a certain amount of money to sell the home, and that typically that listing agent will pay the buyer's agent's broker from the proceeds of that transaction, an agreed upon split ahead of time that is in the MLS listing. And then the broker takes out whatever your agreement is with your broker, and then finally you get paid, and then you pay taxes on that at the end of the year. You know what I mean? It's a lot less than what.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
you know, if you break it down further, there's, you know, when a buyer and a seller get that settlement statement and they say, holy cow, your commission's $10,000, because it's just simply listed out. But like you said, there's not a single agent, whether you're independent or on a team, that makes that entire amount ever in any situation, because we still pay taxes. We do have a broker. In every situation, you have to report to a broker. We have to create our own 401ks as 1099 employees, and health insurance and all the things. So that fee slowly gets chipped away. And
depending on how many homes you showed them, you know what I mean? There was gas, there were all those hours of work that you know, that's you know, there's
I've done plenty of inspections
ahead
for agents that have probably lost money on that deal because of how many they showed, or you know, all that stuff.
And so I think it all of that encompassing goes back to the ethical dilemma of what the question that you asked is, you know, do some agents steer away from, you know, houses that are being offered less commission? And absolutely, because at the end of the day, we all have to feed our families and ourselves and put a roof over our heads.
Or just being a new agent that you went all in and it's been 8 months and you haven't even received your first commission check, but you still have bills, you know, and it's not even, you know, your power bill. It's still office fees and broker fees.
Correct.
And,
your
MLS
monthly
dues,
recurring,
even if it's
all that stuff.
When Cindy became licensed and she told me all those fees she had to pay, I said, man, that's a racket. You know?
We have monthly fees. Every broker has monthly fees. Our MLS has quarterly fees.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I don't have an answer for that because it's not like, you know, everybody thinks, you know, whether it's Keller Williams, Remax, you know, EXP, whoever, it's not like, you know, the brick and mortar Keller Williams office is making enough money to pay everybody, you know, in your office, you know, 200 agents, however many agents there are, 250 agents, you know, monthly salaries, you know, because they still got their bills and their fees, and then they're dependent on the market as well. So if
we have staff there that are salaried and they have to pay those folks, you know, and I mean, and the cool thing is, like, after a certain amount of transactions, I don't pay any more brokerage split for the year, right? So, you know, there is a limit to what I'm going to pay my brokerage in a year. But the point of that is, they're not making so much money hand over fist off every single transaction. I mean, they're budgeting to pay salaries for people, and they need to be profitable.
Exactly. So, like I said, I don't have an answer on how to fix that, or if it even needs to be fixed. But I just think it could be a contributing factor for some on why they would just go ahead and put that house right back on the market, knowing that there's issues because, you know, I haven't had a deal yet, and my kid's birthday's coming up, or Christmas is coming up, or, you know, whatever.
And everyone wants to be successful, right? You know, so if you're in this industry, whether you're good or not, you know, same thing with inspectors. We say this all the time. you don't have to be good to be successful for a short period of time.
Right.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
you can get by being unethical for a little while.
Sure.
Sometimes.
Yep.
Most cases. But it's going to catch up to you.
Yep.
So, you know, I think that comes into play as well. And how long is it going to take for someone to realize that that wasn't just an isolated incident where, you know, something slipped by or you did something unknowingly, et cetera? And when is it a common theme and a common occurrence that comes into play where it is an ethical situation?
That's a great point. So when I first came into real estate in Richmond, it was pointed out to me that Richmond is a very small community of realtors, and if you are not easy to work with, if you are shady, if you are unethical, it will be known very quickly.
Yes.
And you will be doing much fewer transactions.
Yeah.
Right. That being said, when I first came into real estate, I also thought that it was going to be a lot more agents being shady, trying to trick me and, you know, get deals to go through for houses that are lemons, right?
Yeah.
That has not been the case.
Right.
Like most transactions that I do, the agents are like completely professional, totally on the up and up, super helpful.
Right on the
because ultimately everyone has the same goal to make the transaction go through, right? And if for whatever reason it can't go through, you just be upfront about it. Hey, my client lost their job, they can't get the financing. Hey, you know, the home inspection didn't go as well as we thought. Here's the things we need to have done to stay in the transaction. Things like that. Just be straightforward and honest. And that way, even if the deal falls apart and you don't get paid, it's okay. Next time you're in front of that agent and you're writing another offer, they're going to know, hey, you know, this agent was truthful and forthright.
100%.
And, you know, exactly.
And it's going to come back twofold. We actually just had that situation on our high producers on our team last week. One of our high producers, she was on the listing side, and they were under contract. And I don't know the whole story, and they probably put that back on the market, so I wouldn't give the whole story anyways at this point. But the sellers completely pulled the rug out from all of them, including my co-agent as the listing agent, and decided they just didn't want to sell anymore. And so, of course, that was a terrible situation for everyone involved.
Right.
But because of the way she handled it with that buyer's agent and those buyers, after they had terminated and moved on, that agent's broker from the buyer's side actually called her to commend her on how she handled the situation. It was something that was completely out of her control because, we can't force our clients to do anything.
Correct.
We can advise them and hope for the best, but we can't make them also be good clients when we're being a good agent. But, you know, basically to your point is that other side, they notice that. And so the next time a deal comes around, because it's inevitable, we're going to be on a buy-sell side at some point with each other, at least that's the hope, that you want that agent knowing the next time it's a completely different transaction, and I know that you're going to do everything possible to make it successful. So I mean, reputation is so big.
It is.
And I mean, if you're unethical and struggle with these ethical dilemmas and these core values, like it is going to come back around to bite you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what you said is important. You know, I think, like I said in the beginning, the vast majority are ethical agents and inspectors and whatnot. It's just unfortunate that obviously anytime something bad happens, that's the clickbait, right?
Right.
Even if it's a 1 out of 100 chance, but that one is what you're going to see on the news or on Facebook or whatever. And we're just in a time where even still now, you know, we have less than a month worth of inventory, you know, so there's still a shortage out there of homes. So there's still 7,000 agents competing for, you know, small
2,000
numbers.
homes. All these buyers.
So, you know, the frustrations are there, and it's just amplified a little bit more versus if there was a lot more deals going on, they would probably get swallowed up a little bit, you know, better unnoticed and far and fewer in between. Compounded with, like I said, the you know, lack of just experience over the last couple of years. And some of this is just people just don't know, because home inspections, just like real estate, you know, get your license, good to go. You know, there's no apprenticeship. There's no, you know, can I put my license with your company? Sure can. And
Absolutely.
then,
It's almost
yeah.
too easy to get.
Yeah, so there's a whole
license.
lot of uneducation going on in the industry
Right.
on that, because you don't have to shadow anybody or
No.
apprenticeship or do anything. It's just, you know, figure out as you go, and like, well, you know, I'll just pretend I didn't see this, you know, kind of thing.
And most clients don't know better.
Exactly.
They don't know that you're uneducated or inexperienced or lack the training and the knowledge for something successful. And I think that's where a lot of the ideas around the real estate industry and partners come into play, that, you know, clients could do better, or we're not worth our weight in gold, et cetera, because there are these situations that, you know, they couldn't handle things
Absolutely.
professionally.
So how do you guys handle clients that are distrusting of you as an agent because of the perception of the industry?
That's a great question.
It is.
You just hug them? I think Ricky
I
just
just
hugged them.
educate. I just educate them. I just educate them. You know,
Yeah.
you tease that out. Whatever kind of objection or whatever is keeping them from moving forward, you kind of tease that out. You keep asking
100%.
questions. What is it? And you get to the bottom of, why are you not wanting to move forward at this point when it's clearly this home checks off everything that you've said, you know? And if it's an issue of mistrust, a lot of times that's going to be an education issue,
100%.
right? So you just explain to them, you show them like evidence and proof of, you know, why that is not something to really maybe be fearful of, you know, or something like that, you know. And what I love about, like, when I do home inspections with you, Sid, is you always start off like, everything can be fixed, right? Because that is true. And I have actually, like, going in to the home inspection before we even see you, I tell my clients that. I'm like, you know, when we do a home inspection, don't freak out. It's going to be probably 40 pages long, and there's going to be just a slew of items on there, right? But everything can be fixed, and also we can, you know, if you need to be out of the transaction, like, that can happen, you know? Like, so, but yeah, and the money side, I've never really had anyone think that I didn't earn like what I got paid, you know, if they see it on the settlement sheet. That's never been an issue. I think most of the time this stuff just comes from nobody wants to buy a lemon. You know? That's the biggest thing. And so that's why you need a good home inspector, right? Somebody who's going to point out like all the stuff that's going on in there and squeeze into crawl spaces and things like that, you know. What was the question?
Well, I think how you handle it. Ricky, I love everything you just said. I was going to echo that. It comes down to our value proposition.
Right.
You know, which of course we're sitting here talking about, you know, other agents and other home inspectors that don't do everything the way we do it, right? That we're so great.
Well, yeah.
But, you know, we're here to educate. But in that situation, you know, if a client came and said, like, I don't want to work with you, but obviously I have to use an agent to buy a house, you know, which you don't have to, but that's a whole different story. Yeah. You know, it's about the value proposition. We're not going to sit there, especially if you're interviewing other agents or had a bad experience. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, tell me what that agent didn't do for you, and then dog that agent or that home inspector, that situation. Ricky, to your point, it's what can I do for you? What's my value proposition that can be helpful to you, and what's your pain point? That is the number one question that we tell our new agents to ask every single client. You go to them and you say, what is most important to you?
Right.
How would you like me to communicate?
Right.
How would you like me, you know, to lead you with this? Do you prefer the education piece, or do you just want me to tell you to sign here?
Right.
You know, figure out what's important to that client and then tap your value into that. And I find most of the time, if you are authentic and loyal and you have integrity, when you're having that conversation and, you know, answering that question to them, most of the time they're going to see that authenticity. Yeah. And they're going to say, great, that's what was lacking from my previous experience or the other agent I interviewed, et cetera. Most of the time, like, you can tell. I mean, some people are just really good salespeople and can pitch that you're going to have a great experience with me, And then, of course, it's a bad experience,
That's
right?
right.
We know this.
That's right.
But I do think if you ask the right questions, and that's where the education for the client comes in, and finding out what's most important, and then identifying that and keeping that in mind all the way through. Don't just listen to them at that first appointment and then forget about what they need throughout the transaction. So I find you win a lot of people over. When
I think it's just it's listening to why they feel that way and then educating them, because I've had plenty of clients, where I either got the heads up or they just told me, they had a bad experience, with a home inspector previously. And as much, like I said, we're talking about others here, but when I've heard that, I've never gone, well, man, that sucks. You had a bad home inspector. I'll listen to what they say, and most of the time, it's a devil's advocate kind of thing. Like, well, because I wasn't there, and most of the time, I can listen to the story and say, that could have easily been me. On the other end, that they had a bad experience with. And most of the time, I just explain to them what probably happened, what could have happened. And they're like, oh, well, we didn't know that you couldn't do that. We didn't know that you didn't have to do that or whatever. And, it kind of disarms them, calms them down, and starts building a little bit of trust. But it's, but it goes back to, some of that distrust is sown because they just don't understand.
Right.
So it's not even that they had a bad agent or a bad inspector. It's just that they didn't
know what was going on.
Yeah, they didn't know what to expect, because they didn't know what the process was. They didn't know what all that stuff is. Like, hey, my home inspector missed this leak. Okay, well, when did you get that done? Well, I got it done in August. All right. Well, when was the last time it rained?
Absolutely.
Was that house vacant for 2 years?
Right.
Nobody living in it, so the water wasn't being ran. Like, oh no, well, I guess you're right. So a lot of times it's just listening, and because it's really easy to like, man, that guy was horrible.
Yeah. Right.
Tell me who that is.
Right.
But I try not to do that.
Right.
And because and even if I did do that, all that does is just continues to bring down the industry.
Well, and it makes you look bad as well.
It does.
We should not be focused on bringing down our competitors.
Right.
No, not at all.
So, it's a reflection on the person if we take that approach.
Yep.
Rather than switching the gears back to, okay, I hear you. This is how I'm going to help to make sure that you don't have that same experience again.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm so focused on honing my own craft that I don't like what other agents are out there doing is not my concern if we are not in a transaction together.
Correct.
Right.
One thing that I ask all of my clients when I first meet with them, whether they're buyers or sellers, what about this process? What's the number one thing that worries you, gives you anxiety, or frightens you, right? And so on buyers, 50% of the time it's condition issues, right? And so, hey, that's super common. The good thing about that is you get the home inspection. The home inspector will come in, we'll make a list of everything that, is a defect, and we can negotiate the repairs. That's part of my job, is to make sure that all of that stuff that is scaring you is taken care of for you, and that condition-wise, things like that. So I think that helps people trust you more. But the trust issue is really, I guess, whether or not people think that you are ethical is a trust issue, right? And so most of my business is referral based, right? Like past clients are like, use this guy, he did a fantastic job for me, and that already sets up a ton of trust going into it, that they trust that I'm going to treat them ethically and do my fiduciary duty to keep their best interest forefront through the whole thing. It's not about me making a commission. It's about you finding the perfect home for you, or you selling you meeting your real estate goal, whether that is selling your house quickly for top dollar, whether that is buying your forever home, like an investment property, whatever. I'm here to, generate the best possible outcome for you, no matter how it's going to go for me. Some of them are really easy, and you make what feels like a ton of money, and some of them are really hard, and you barely get, in the end, you barely come out with any money, but you've gained a client, and they're going to refer business to you in the future, and so that's what keeps me on the rails. And plus, I feel like I'm just like an ethical guy. I don't have it in me to just lie, cheat, and steal through
Right.
through the business. this. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to the morals, right?
Right.
Like, what type of person
Right.
is taking that role in our industries? Is that person a moral person to begin with? If they're not, they're probably, in most cases, not going to be the most ethical agent or home inspector or lender or whatever the case may be. But you're not going to build a referral business based on lack
and
of
you may have to shift
morals
markets and brokers
ethics.
frequently.
Yes.
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 But it takes a strong person to want to work hard in our industry and set a good precedence to change that misinterpretation about us.
Another aspect of ethics in the real estate industry that maybe doesn't get talked about a lot is when you represent a seller and they know there are many things wrong with the home and they tell you, and then they ask you not to disclose those things, and you have to let them know, I am bound by a code of ethics. Now that you have told me in order to sell this house, I must disclose these things.
It's like when I was in the fire department and there was some shenanigans going on and somebody go into Captain's office, like, Captain, I gotta tell you something. And Captain always say, are you sure you gotta tell me? Because as soon as you tell me, I got to do something about it.
That's
and
right.
they think about it like, no, I'm good. Walk out.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, and that's a great point, Ricky, because, if someone's not in this industry, they may not know, things like, and it's different state to state. Virginia's a buyer beware state.
Correct.
So our sellers sign those disclosure forms, which, we know what those are because we deal with them all the time. And we know that we have to ethically disclose, but the seller does not.
Right.
So a buyer, in their minds, they're thinking it's like buying a used car, and then it breaks down the week after. Well, they knew, why didn't they tell me? Or how could they sell this to me? So a lot of buyers come into it, they start having issues, and it's like, how could the seller, they had to have known. Maybe they did, but unfortunately in our state, the seller doesn't have to disclose, and if we're not aware of it, we can't. And we do have the duty to disclose it, which I don't think always happens.
Yes.
If we're aware of something, even though we should be. Right. Or seeing a home inspection from a previous transaction and then not disclosing what was found.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming in.
Yeah.
I thought, like I said, I've had a string of just fun inspections.
Yeah.
So I thought this was an important topic just to tackle because, like I said, even if it's just 1% of the industry, that's still obviously persuading public trust in the industry. And going back to what you said earlier, like, you don't need, quote unquote, an agent. You can do it on your own, as goofy as that is. But when the level of distrust gets to a certain point, it's a threat to the industry. So even if it's just 1% of the industry that has ethical questions about them, something has happened along the way to get a majority of the population, at least in some of the studies I've seen, to distrust the industry as a whole. And like I said, it's not sitting here just bashing individuals or certain people, it's just a threat to the industry as a whole, because there's a lot of good agents out there. There's a lot of good home inspectors out there. I think that we work with a ton of them. The ones that are ethical, or say the ones that stick around us long term, and we develop relationships with. But it can't be, just glossed over as well. There's just a few, because while that may be true, there's still an issue within the industry of because if people get to a tipping point where 80%, 90%, maybe it's 68.5%, get to the point where they don't trust the industry to the point where, like, we'll just do it on our own, then we're all in trouble.
Right, including the clients, mainly the clients at that point.
Yeah.
Yes, because guess what? Like FSBOs, which is realtor speak for sale by owner, they're not bound by a code of ethics. They can do any old wild thing and sell you whatever. So it goes both ways. Like, you may not want to sell your house on your own. You may not want to buy buy a home that is being sold without a realtor.
Yeah.
Because there's no standard of ethics that anyone is bound to on the sell side of that transaction. You know,
and there's got to be one person that you can find to trust. You know,
Right,
you don't
right,
correct.
You don't like home inspectors or don't trust real estate professionals. Okay, it's just like healthcare. You don't like your doctor, you go to a different
That's
doctor.
right.
It's your tax advisor, you go to a different tax advisor. So, you know, I would just urge people, you know, we have to set a different standard. And I think, you know, people that are bound by ethics and live into that, we are doing our best to set those standards and educate people, and that's all we can do.
Yeah.
We can't take responsibility for others.
For sale by owners are my favorite type of inspections, as you show up and the guy's in his underwear,
Wanting
cooking
to, like,
breakfast,
follow you
drinking
through.
beer, and talking about just help
How
yourself.
perfect.
Nothing wrong
Or
with
how
it.
perfect his house is.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I fixed that myself back in '73.
Yep.
Sure, the homeowner special.
Okay.
That's a whole
awesome.
other podcast.
That's right. That's right. That'll be next month's topic. But I appreciate you guys coming in.
Yeah, of course, man.
Actually, I don't have the answers to any of this, other than people like you guys just doing what you do, and which I think most agents do, and one client at a time, I guess.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you, Sid.
till next time.